Hello and welcome everyone to our summer feature release webinar. Good morning to you if you are experiencing a morning where you're at in the world. Good afternoon if it's an afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I need to work on my greetings. My name is Josh Straley. I'm the product marketing manager here at FormAssembly. I'm going to be your MC for today, and I am so excited to show you what we have to offer today. Some really exciting new features, security enhancements, new integrations, and we're going to demonstrate all of those features to you today. I can't wait for you to see them, and I can't wait to hear feedback from you as well. Before we get started today and I introduce your presenters, just a second for some housekeeping. This is the platform. We've been using this for quite some time. Bear with me if you've attended a webinar of ours before. If you're new, welcome. I love this webinar platform. A lot of bells and whistles. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is right below me is a Q&A box. Our friend Christian has already found that today. Christian, good morning. You can use that to communicate with me during the webinar. If you have any questions, if you're struggling with the platform at all, please send me a message. I'll respond to you as soon as I can. But we will be having a live Q&A at the end of the session today. So hold some questions about the connectors. If you have a question for myself or any of our presenters, that Q&A box is the way to get that in front of us. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is our resources section. We have some resources in this webinar, including a recording of how to configure your multi-factor authentication in your account. If you are a FormAssembly customer with a multi-user plan on Essentials, Team, Enterprise, or Government, you have access to our multi-factor authentication feature as of the 31st, so the end of last month. We have a recorded tutorial in there for you because we are going to demo that feature today, but it does have some sensitive information, as a part of the multi-factor authentication process. So we're not going to demo the entire feature. So take a look at that recorded demo to walk through it for yourself if you need some guidance. There's also a link to get a hold of our sales team. If you are not on a multi-user plan and you need to bring more users to your account, or if you need to purchase any of the connector add-ons that we're going to demonstrate today, that's the fastest way to get that value unlocked in your account. Schedule a meeting with our sales team, and they're going to be able to talk to you about what you need and get that into your account. Last but not least, we're going to show you the features today, but if you need access to any of the help documentation that we produce in our knowledge base at help.formassembly.com, use the link to read our feature launch blog that's in the resources section. That's going to link you to additional recorded tutorials and direct links to our knowledge base so you can follow up on any of the features that you see today. Use that as kind of your quick jump into the world of knowledge. All right, what we're going to show you, we're going to be showing you three different things today. We're going to be talking through the security enhancement that we released as a part of our summer release. That includes multi-factor authentication I mentioned earlier, but also our updated password requirements. We're going to take a look at new storage connectors, both available today and ones coming later this summer, and possibly most exciting, our new Webhook connector, which is really going to open up the possibilities of integrating your forms and workflows with the proprietary software that your organizations rely on. We cannot wait to see what you do with that connector. It's very exciting. One of my favorite features of this platform is that I can ask you to take a poll, and I'd love to hear what brought you here today. Which of the launch features that we've mentioned or that I just mentioned are most exciting to you? What are you most excited to see? I'm going to give just a couple seconds for everybody to click. You can click right to the, forgive me, I think it's going to be my left or your right. Anyway, click directly on the slide, the answer that you'd like to submit. I'll give you 30 seconds, and then we'll move on with the presentation today. I made some changes to the layout of our Q&A box and things before this presentation, and I'm still obviously getting used to the directions of where things are located. All right, fantastic. Let me give you 10 more, and then we'll go ahead. We'll see what everybody's excited for today, and then we'll get on with the presentation. All right, thank you all for submitting your answers. I'm going to pull the rug out from under you. Oh, fantastic. Looks like a lot of people are interested in seeing the Sharepoint connector today. Fantastic. We're going to do a live demonstration of that. The Google Drive connector, not in second. In third, multi-factor authentication. Cannot wait to show you what you can do with that feature. And our Webhook connector came in. Oh, that looks like third. I think you're all going to be very excited to see what that connector can do. So thank you for giving me this answer. Excited that you're excited about these features. Before I move on too much further, you got to listen to me for a little bit longer. I do want to introduce our fellow presenters today. Joining me is product trainer Joelle Swanson and product manager Matt Green. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone? I hope everyone's doing good. I'm excited for the webinar today.
Thank you. Good morning, Joelle. We just had a question that I forgot to answer during our housekeeping section. Thank you, Sarah, for reminding me. This presentation is recorded. Look for the recording to hit your inbox in about 24 hours. Typically, we get it out the next day after that presentation. Thank you for that question, Sarah. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the features that we're going to be showing you today before we get into the live demo. So I'm so excited that so many of you are excited for multi-factor authentication. This has been a customer request for quite some time. You know, we've had secure login options like our secure sign-in, you know, our CAS and LDAP directory availability. You know, we offer ways to, you know, you can secure your sign-on and to your account. But multi-factor authentication is something we've wanted to bring to the market for quite some time. I'm so excited that we've delivered on that. My favorite part about multi-factor authentication is that we've really put the control in your hands. So with the new MFA, as I mentioned, if you're on a multi-user plan, Essentials, Team, Enterprise, or Government, you can now enable multi-factor authentication for your users, and you can require it for them as well. My favorite feature is the flexibility that we're offering with this. You can let your users choose the authentication method of their choice. So they can choose their own one-time password generator. If you're an organization that uses YubiKey, you can use that as well. It allows your users the flexibility to set up the authentication method that works for them. If they've got Google Authenticator, you know, Microsoft Authenticator, whatever they're using already, they can use to set up MFA. I also want to call a note, you know, if you're a current customer, you may have reset your password in the last 30 days, and you may have noticed more stringent password requirements. We're doing everything we can to make sure that your data and the data you collect are secure and kept away from bad actors. And so we just, you know, bringing a greater complexity to passwords helps you, and the data keeps your company safe as well as the data that you collect. One other thing I want to mention, and it's very exciting. We recently brought our TxRAMP compliance, which is similar to StateRAMP compliance specific to the state of Texas, recently was added to our enterprise plan. If you're a government agency or a university or school working in Texas, you may be required to use TxRAMP compliance software. Make sure that, you know, like if you need that brought to your account, reach out to our sales team and they'll be able to work with you to make sure that you have text forms and workflows. I'm going to pause for a second. I did get a question about not being able to hear anything. It looks like that's only affecting one person. Join again. That should fix your audio issue that at least has worked for other people in the past. Thank you for giving me a time just to fix somebody's speaker issue. Our storage connectors, many of you excited for our Microsoft SharePoint connector. Super excited to deliver that to you along with the Google Drive connector. These, what we're kind of terming storage connectors, allow you to securely sync and store files collected through your workflow forms with the workspace and the storage platform of your choice. You know, we've delivered Microsoft SharePoint. It's available today, as is Google Drive. Later this summer, we're also going to open up to Dropbox and Box platforms. We know a lot of people use those for storage in collaboration. You know, those platforms are really expanding what you can do with those files, or pardon me, with their features. And we're very excited to open up these opportunities. One thing I want to make clear with our storage connectors is they're built a little bit differently than connectors you may use with other platforms. These are direct integrations with the endpoints of these platforms. So if you are using FormAssembly for HIPAA-compliant data collection with a BAA, and if you have a BAA signed with these platforms, you can use these connectors to securely and compliantly pass files between your forms and your storage platform of choice. I know that a lot of other, we'll just say competitors in the market have restrictions when it comes to many of their integrations because they rely on third-party services similar to Zapier, something similar to that, that isn't HIPAA compliant. We work incredibly hard, and I'm very proud of our engineering team to make sure that these natively built connectors on the FormAssembly workflow platform connect directly to the endpoints of these platforms, so there's no middleman. And so you don't have to worry about your sensitive data being passed non-compliantly through these connectors. It's a big differentiation over, again, I won't name names, but some of the competitors in the market, and we hope you see the value in that. And I brought this up earlier. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about today is our Webhook connector. I want you to think of this, if you're familiar with our HTTPS connector, as the second version of that. It has expanded capabilities and a much better user interface built on the workflow platform. You're going to love how clean and simple it is to build on this connector. And when I say build, I want to call out that this connector offers a body editor that allows you or a developer on your team, because this can get a little technical, to build in JSON or raw data formats exactly the information you want to pass through this API connector. It also includes, well, I kind of mentioned them already. It includes new file formats. Previously, HTTPS was just URL encoded. Now you can also use raw or JSON file formats. And we've included new authorization capabilities as well, including OAuth and API keys. This is something that especially people who have been using our HTTPS connector have been requesting for quite some time. The flexibility that we're giving you with this connector is to the point where we don't even know where the possibilities end. We cannot wait to see you put this connector to use. Joelle's going to show you the configuration possibilities of this connector today, and I want you to use your imagination on where you can apply this. Matt's going to talk about it a little bit later, but we hope that this is the tool that enables you to connect your forms and workflows to the proprietary software that you have, your organization maybe custom built and relies on, or some of the systems that just don't have, standalone integrations with a lot of form and data collection providers. This connector should give you the flexibility to connect to those systems. We really can't wait to get it into your hands and see what you do with it. All right, I think that's about enough for me. Before I turn things over to Joelle, I just want to make clear for our customers, the connectors that you're going to see today, the storage connectors, Box and Dropbox that are coming later this summer, and the Webhook connector are available as add-ons. So that does mean you need to talk to the sales team to add those to your account today. When you do that, when you go talk to the sales team, they're going to be able to flip this on. You will have permission settings over these connectors. So I just want to make clear, you do need to have a conversation with our team to get these into your account. And then you will need to, of course, give those permissions to your users to use them. Make sure you follow up in the documentation that I've linked through our launch blog on how to bring these in and use these connectors. And again, I can't wait to see you use them. Please reach out to our sales team if you see value in Sharepoint, Drive, or our Webhook connector today. I think you should talk to our sales team, and we'll get those into your account. All right, Joelle, I think I'm ready to turn things over to you. I think I've talked enough for today. Let's go ahead and show the people what they came to see.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. Okay, give me just a second to share my screen, and then we can get diving into stuff here. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to show everyone is going to be one of our security enhancements, that password expiration that Josh mentioned. One thing that we pride ourselves here on FormAssembly is our security measures. And with the password expiration that you can now set here in your admin dashboard and then under settings and application, you can force your users to automatically update their password based on either 30 days, 60 days, all the way up to a year, depending on your security needs. So you can really just kind of make sure that your FormAssembly accounts are matching with your security needs. Okay, then the next kind of security focused one is MFA. MFA is definitely a really exciting feature that you can add to your accounts. It would require your users to provide that additional method of authenticating themselves besides just a username and password. The first step of enabling MFA for your account is going to be here in the admin dashboard again, and it's going to be under our security page. So as a admin, to allow your users to set up MFA, you do have to come in here and toggle this option to enable multi-factor authentication for your instance. That will then allow your users to set it up. You can also choose to force all your users to log in with multi-factor authentication. Now, on the reverse side of that, how do your users set up their MFA accounts? Because that's going to be on a user-by-user basis. Well, all they need to do is go up to their username, then go to their account. They'll see this Configure MFA button where they can click on it and they can see this precedence timeline for their multi-factor authenticators. All they need to do is click Add Authentication Method and select either a time-based one-time password or a YubiKey method. After they've clicked on one of those, they just need to click Configure. I'm not going to go into the configuration of any of the authenticators just because, as I mentioned, we're very security focused here and minded at FormAssembly, and that will show some sensitive information for my account. But as Josh mentioned, we do have the MFA training that was released that goes through all of that, so you can see that in action. And moving on, I was so excited to see so many of you so excited to see the SharePoint connector. That's going to be our next demo for today. And with this Microsoft SharePoint connector, this is just one of our many storage connectors that will allow workflow creators to send files from your workflow responses to whatever storage integration you need to or you are using for your storage. So with the Microsoft SharePoint connector, it's not just going to be just that connector. You can use the Microsoft SharePoint connector to also connect to our Microsoft Excel connector, which I'll get into throughout the demo. So whenever you want to add the SharePoint, all you need to do is just click Add, and you'll see that new connector option right there. Now, this workflow is already all set up, but I want to just kind of show you this one rather than going through the steps, because I can then show you the responses and how those responses look both in FormAssembly and Excel and SharePoint. So here in the connector, we've got our description tab, which is just same as everything, our authorization where you can connect to your 365 account, and then the configuration tab. Now here in the configuration tab, we're going to use actions again for the SharePoint connector. And this just allows you to set where you want those file uploads to be. The file uploads can be sent to multiple destinations in your SharePoint. You can send a variety of things, all with that customization of an action. When you have an action that you're setting up, you'll select that file that you want to send to SharePoint, the destination in SharePoint you want to send that to, and then we have this subfolder. So you can you can write in a subfolder within that destination if you'd like to, but you can also set custom subfolder names as I've done here. When you're setting a custom subfolder name, I have the alias for the first name and last name of my response. So then that way it can be Alex test response in my SharePoint, and I can see that and immediately know whose responses and files those are. We then also have the optional return variables that you can return in the SharePoint connector. These are going to be kind of a new thing where after the SharePoint connector runs, you can have these return variables return the ID or URL to a field or variable in your workflow. For this field, it's returning the ID and URL to a field that I have hidden in this file upload form. And I'm also choosing to create variables for each of those fields. Now, these variables are going to be what I'm going to be using in our Microsoft Excel connector. And we can move on to the Microsoft Excel connector and see the configuration. So here in my connector, I'm again have an action. We've seen that in action, so I don't need to explain too much about it. But here's where I'm using those variables I set up in my SharePoint connector. And I'm just pulling those in by clicking the F, and we see those workflow variables. And those are all the variables I created in my SharePoint connector that I can pull in and use in my Microsoft Excel connector. So now that we've kind of seen that, let's look at the response and see how that response kind of looks after you've submitted it. View. So we've got this response here. And with this response, I have returned those IDs and URLs for my response for Alex test here. So I can easily access if like there's a reviewer or an approver that you want to have in FormAssembly, they can access the URL for that response file upload directly from FormAssembly. But if we move on to Excel, we can see that I have all of my responses along with the IDs and URLs sent to Excel. So I can access it directly from Excel. Now you might be curious of what those subfolders might look like in SharePoint. Now we can come in here. I have that the destination was the knowledge and training site. And then here's all of those subfolders in here that I have set up that automatically send from my workflow here. So it's really a great tool that you can just take advantage of and really send and customize where that information is going into your SharePoint. Now, let's get into something that I bet everyone's super curious about, and that's going to be our brand new Webhook connector. This one is so cool, and I'm so excited to see, honestly, what everyone's going to end up doing with it, because it's not just like a one-fits-all connector. It's just kind of so many opportunities that you can use with it that Matt will get into in a little bit. But let's go into the connector first. And with the Webhook connector, after you've added it to your form, the authorization, as Josh mentioned, you can have new authorizations. With the new authorizations, you'll set the name, you'll set the authorization type, the OAuth, you have all of these options here, your client secret IDs, URLs, all of that you enter in. Then you click authorize. You also then have the API key. And here with the API key, you'll just set all of those options there. But don't forget, you also have the basic where you can enter in the username and password for your site that you're trying to connect to. Now, if you're unsure of where to get like the OAuth or the API key information, you can talk to your developers to get this information. That's something that they'll have readily available. Now, once you've entered in your information and authorized it, you can go on to configuration. Oh, sorry, give me just 1 second. I got kicked off of the IP server, so let me reconnect real fast. And then we can continue on.
Joelle, just very quickly while we wait for the reconnection, I want to mention that, the SharePoint connector that you just demoed, the Google Drive version of that connector, same configuration. So we were just going to show SharePoint today, but the Google Drive is going to behave incredibly similarly. Obviously, you just need to authenticate it to your Google workspace rather than your Microsoft workspace. So if you do need Google Drive specific instructions, click that launch blog link in our resources center, and it'll take you over to our help knowledge base. Forgive me.
Perfect. Thank you for mentioning that, Josh. I kind of forgot. And Box and Dropbox will also be very similar setups. So it'll be kind of that same thing when you go in and we release those connectors to set it up and get those files sent over to Box or Dropbox. Thank you, Josh. Okay, let's see. Okay, yes, I am reconnected now. Perfect. So when you have an authorization, as I have here, you can also choose to edit that authorization. And you can come in here and edit any of that information as you need to. You can also choose to save as new. You can also click manage to revoke any authorizations. And a really cool security feature that we have here is only the original creator of the authorization can manage that authorization, ensuring that security for your authorization and your controls over that sensitive configuration. So even if you have this workflow shared with multiple users, don't worry, your webhook connection, the authorization is only going to be available to that creator. So only yourself if you set that up, making it very secure. Now we can get into the configuration now that I'm reconnected. So after you've authorized your webhook connectors, you'll see the actions here in the webhook connector. And when you have the actions, the first step in configuring your action is going to be setting that parameters. So in the parameters, you'll set your endpoint URL, but then you'll also set the method. You'll kind of remember this from our HTTPS connector where we have the get and put, but we also have additional methods now. We have post and patch. So what do each of these do? So get, you can retrieve that data from your server. It will simply say whether that connection is successful or not, make that case, and then post. Post is going to be where you send data to your server to create or update a resource. Patch is going to be partially updates a resource or server, and then put is going to be replaces or updates an entire resource on the server. Now, which one you use for these will depend on where you're sending that data. Some servers require only certain methods, so it'll just kind of depend on your server that you're connecting to. If you have any questions about that, your development team can help you figure out which method you need to use. You then have the option to add custom headers to your request. This custom header section allows you to add fields, values, or aliases that will be sent as part of the request headers. Now, the final section that you'll need to configure is the body, and this is really where all the benefits of the Webhook connector comes into play. You can connect using form data. That's where you just add another form field, and you can select the form field, a value, and then you map it to the field name that you're sending that data to. So like MailChimp, you can set first name to the first name in MailChimp, the email to the email field. You can really set that up with that form data, those correlating fields. Then we have the URL encoded section. Now, the URL encoded is going to be pretty similar to the form data. It'll be corresponding fields that you'll map, but this will be sent as encoded values. So this is typically in the format of a query string. And this format is useful when you're interacting with APIs or web services that require data to be sent via the URL itself. So it's just kind of a good way to send over the non-complex data, and usually is GET requests, but could be a variety. That will be dependent on what you're doing with it. So the last two content types that you can send in the body are going to be JSON and raw data. And these ones are really cool, but they may also require the use of more of a hand from your developers to actually get them configured correctly to map. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you might need to reach out for help. But with the JSON, this is a lightweight data interchange format that uses structured nested format, and you can use it to send over related data from your forms into wherever your integrations are. We can also then map with the raw data. And with the raw data, you'll again just kind of choose how you want that data sent over to your integration. You can insert a text field here and just select that to send over to your data, both for raw and JSON, and then just kind of format it however you need to. This really the Webhook connector allows you to precisely put what you need to send to your integration exactly as you need to, and really gives you full versatility of how to handle that data. And I'm going to hand it over to Matt, who's really going to talk to that versatility.
Thank you so much, Joelle. Yeah, I just want to take a chance here to emphasize how great this new connector is and what a step up from the current HTTPS connector is. So as Joelle mentioned, you're going to get new authorization methods. And so that's going to open up additional applications. Think of all the different applications you have running inside your company. This is going to open up those doors to get data from FormAssembly to your endpoint. This is going to be student information systems, electronic health record systems, think like Epic, and ERP systems, think like NetSuite and Oracle. So really with this new authorization and then these new data formats, JSON's a modern way to send data. A lot of applications require that. And currently you may have a service, a microservice running to where it transposes data into JSON. You could possibly remove that job and get this connector to just send JSON data to your endpoint. So really that's the true value here. And even out of the box connectors that we don't currently offer, that we will along the way, you can connect to those as well. So this connector is a one-to-many, it's agnostic, and really the value is hooking up to homegrown systems. I've worked in large enterprises. We all have them. They all have a tough time connecting. So this connector will enable that and unlock that. And we all truly think this will be a valuable addition to you and our product. So we are, like we said, excited for you to try it out and let us know what use cases you have from it. So thank you.
Yeah, we cannot wait to see what you do with this connector. And thank you both. Joelle, thank you as always for your demonstrations. Really appreciate how well you construct those and just walking us through it. I understand things better after I see you explain them. And Matt, thank you for giving us a rundown of what we're hoping, people do with this connector. We have a couple of proven use cases, as Joelle showed. MailChimp and our developers are exploring the platforms that we have available to us. But as I mentioned earlier, if your organization custom builds software, there probably aren't out-of-the-box integrations for you. This connector is a way for you to build your integration. And as Joelle showed, you may need some help from your developers, but it will be worth it. And we can't wait to see what you do. One thing I want to do really quickly, maybe you got your juices flowing after watching the API connector, like the configuration options there. We'd love to hear what systems you want to connect with. And I want to hear from everyone. You may not need to connect like the API, you may not need to use the Webhook connector. You may not be worried about API endpoints. You may be saying, I need to connect to the McDonald's app, that kind of thing. We want to hear what systems you're hoping for us to connect to. McDonald's probably isn't in the future, bad example. But go ahead and give me just, one system that you're hoping to connect to. Our team has been working, as you can tell, to expand the suite of connectors that you have available to you in FormAssembly. We spent a lot of time natively building these into the platform, making sure that they're secure, that they're compliant, that they work well. We need to know what you need so that we can bring more value to you. So we'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and submit this. This is not one of those fun polls where I can show results because it's just going to be open text, but I'm going to pass all of the submissions that you make into this form onto our developers. I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds, then we're going to move to our Q&A section, which I'm very excited about because I have seen some really exciting questions rolling in. Can't wait to get you some answers. Now, as well, besides typing in a system that you'd like to connect to, now's the time to get those questions in so we can get them answered today. All right, I'm going to pull the rug out from under us. Thank you for those of you that submitted. We're going to pass that information on to our team and continue to give you the connectors that you're asking for. All right, so let's get into some questions today. Matt and Joelle, tons of good stuff. One of the questions that I've seen most repeated by our audience today, this one from Leslie, and I heard this a couple times. My staff access FormAssembly through our Salesforce org, and we log into that using Salesforce Authenticator with multi-factor authentication, as Salesforce started requiring a couple years ago. Will we need to apply MFA and password rules? A lot of people are wondering, will MFA and our updated passwords impact them if they're already accessing FormAssembly through like Salesforce? What do we say to them?
Hi, Leslie. No, it should not impact your connection through Salesforce. How it kind of works is you already have that SSO MFA connection from FormAssembly to Salesforce. So you already have that established authentication. So when you're logging into Salesforce, the MFA on FormAssembly side will not affect you. It will be when you log in directly to FormAssembly. If your users choose to log in through that FormAssembly direct link rather than Salesforce, that is where the MFA will come into play for your users.
Yes, and thank you. And I think we had Manish ask that question as well. If not all of your users are using Salesforce authentication to log in, enabling MFA will obviously impact them and may help improve your security footing by making sure that everyone accessing, whether in Salesforce or, as Joelle mentioned, logging in through the web app, it will make sure that they go through that two-factor step. So that might still be worth doing for you, even if again, most of your users are logging in through Salesforce. We had a couple questions about specifically our box connector. So obviously still to come later this summer, the configuration options are going to be very similar to what you saw with Microsoft SharePoint today, but I'm going to try to get this question answered for you anyway. Kevin asks, with box.com, would I be able to return a public share link for a folder or document sent by FormAssembly to Box? So this sounds a little bit like our file URL. I'm not sure if a return variable would include the public share link, but Matt, what are our thoughts there?
Yeah, so yeah, ideally it's going to have the URL. Would need to get more information exactly around the public side of things, but ideally, yeah, it's going to have the URL, so that will be available, and then the document ID as well. So that's what we're aiming for.
Great. And, Kevin, and for the rest of you looking forward to Box and Dropbox, keep an eye on your inbox. We'll make an announcement when those connectors are available, and we'll have some of that documentation to answer these questions when they're available as well. Fantastic. This from my friend Barb. Barb asks, how does the Webhook connector differ from the HTTPS connector? And we've kind of touched on this, but I'd love to just, hear again, what are the big expansions on what we can do?
Yeah, I can take this one. Yeah, as I mentioned, the additional authorizations. So with the basic HTTPS connector, you just have basic authorization. So you just have username and password, which isn't the most secure, isn't the most modern. So typically applications need API keys, OAuth2. You get that with this webhook. You also get additional data formats. The HTTPS connector only does URL encoded data, but as Joelle mentioned, you now have more ways to send data, different formats. We all know different applications require these different formats. And so this new connector has a lot more functionality that's going to address critical business applications that you have inside your company.
Yeah.
I also would like to, sorry, Josh, I'd like to add to that too. A lot of integrations and things are actually moving away from like API keys and basic password usernames connections with their endpoints. And they're forcing OAuth2 to connect to endpoints. So this webhook connector is just kind of helping to account for those future integrations that might force that OAuth2 connection. I think Zoom's one of those where they no longer allow API keys. They only allow connection through OAuth2, whereas a year and a half ago they did. So just kind of things like that will allow you to actually connect to them, versus our HTTPS connector, you could not connect to it.
100%.
Yeah. Barb, and for the rest of you that are curious about the webhook connector, I do encourage you to reach out to our sales team. I know, obviously, like, hey, you're already customers, right? It's like, why should I talk to the sales team? The sales team is going to be able to give you a personalized demo. We have solution engineers that are going to be able to walk you through the webhook's capabilities, and they're going to be able to see, hey, does this work for whatever platform you're trying to connect to. So that's why I'd encourage you to have that conversation, not just trying to get you on a sales call. What I'd love to see is, how does this connector fit into your workflows, your processes? How does this connect to, will it work for the systems that we don't know about that your organization is using and you desperately need to get form data to? That's why we want you to have that conversation, because they're going to be able to get all those details from you and walk you through those steps. Let's do, I've got an MFA question. This from Lexi. Is MFA optional or enforced? Can we turn it on and off for individual users?
So it would be, you turn it on for your instance, and it is enforced for all you can choose to enforce it for all users. You can't choose to be like, oh, I want user A and C to enforce multi-factor authentication, but not user B. It would be kind of like, you can enable it for anyone could choose to set it up or choose not to set it up, even though it's enabled for your instance, or you can choose to enable it for all your users, then all users would have to set it up. But as the admin, you can also see if you enable MFA for your instance, you can go in and see for your users in their user profile on the admin dashboard what MFA options they have set up. And you can make sure that there is MFA enabled for certain users if you do need those certain users to use MFA.
Thank you for that, Joelle. Let me get another MFA question. With this update, this from Rebecca Sullivan, with this update to MFA, can we enforce single sign-on?
I don't think you could enforce single sign-on, just because, actually, Matt, would you be better able to answer that question?
Yeah, I honestly would need to get clarification on that but we can follow up for sure.
Right. If you enable SSO on your account through a cast directory and LDAP directory, I believe it's enforced, and that's the only way that users can log in. So,
Yeah.
Rebecca, with MFA, this is separate from our single sign-on feature. This is you don't have to provide us a directory. In fact, it's as easy as flipping a switch, and then your users can set their authentication and access method of their choice, whatever authenticator they want to use as their one-time password generator. So there's not very much overlap in those two features, except that obviously they're both about login. If you have more questions about SSO or MFA, I'd encourage you to reach out to our support team. They should be able to help you navigate that and see, like if you need to enforce certain things, or just wondering like, how can I better protect my account and make sure that like login is seamless for my users, reach out to support, and they're going to be able to give you a little bit more advice than we can give you in a live setting. Let me switch over from MFA very quickly and take some SharePoint questions. Scott asks, does the SharePoint connector only work for documents, or can it be made to work with SharePoint lists, parentheses, store form response data into lists? I'm not incredibly familiar with SharePoint lists, so I might need some help with this.
Yeah, I am familiar with lists. We do not support lists at this time. They are exciting, and I would like to have that included along the way. But right now it is for file uploads.
Okay, so there you go. If you're collecting files through your forms, those are what are going to be synced to your SharePoint rather than form response data. A follow-up question, this one from Bill, will the SharePoint connector also allow us to save to OneDrive folders?
You do have access to your OneDrive. You will need to own the OneDrive file. But yeah, it will allow you to go there though.
Great. One last question on this topic. Do you need both the Excel connector and the SharePoint connector to send response data to SharePoint? For instance, if you don't have the Excel connector, where does the data go? Or is the Excel connector included as a part of the SharePoint connector? Great question, Carrie.
Yeah, so the Excel connector will go to your OneDrive, and then the SharePoint will have the file go to your SharePoint site. But then that's where the return variables can come in, and that way you have the URL and the document ID inside your Excel file, and so you can link back to your SharePoint site.
Yeah, and then to further expand, it is not required to use the SharePoint and Excel connector together. You can use just the SharePoint connector, and it will still send those files over to your SharePoint. And the return variables is really kind of the only time where the Excel connector and SharePoint really work together. And that's if you just want to be able to see all of those URLs or IDs in one place for your workflow. That's kind of where those return variables come into play. Otherwise, you do not need to have the SharePoint and Excel add-on. You can choose one or the other, whatever fits your needs. You don't need both.
Right. And Carrie, to your question about where the response data goes, it would go into FormAssembly as it normally would. And you of course, have access to it there. Or if you're sending your response data to Salesforce or anywhere else, obviously it would live there. But if you wanted to store response data in an Excel document and collect files and send them to SharePoint, that is when you would need both of those connectors. One more question on our storage connectors. This from Dan. Can you write multiple responses to a single Excel file rather than all those subfolders?
Yes. So when we saw my Excel sheet, you saw all of those responses to my workflow. So then with all of those responses, it had all of the IDs and URLs for every single file uploaded to that specific response in that line. You can also change up how you store your SharePoint connectors and the files and stuff. You don't have to separate them into subfolders like I did in mine. You can send all of those files to just one folder in your SharePoint or just one destination in your SharePoint. It's really kind of versatile. It doesn't have to be how I set it up. That was just kind of the way I did it. But there's multiple ways that you can store those files for your workflow. You can have just true availability to do whatever suits your needs.
I have a follow-up from a question earlier, and this is more of a statement. this from Rachel. Lists can be populated by an Excel spreadsheet. So she's talking SharePoint lists. So with another step, if you are looking to connect directly to SharePoint lists, that can be done. I know we've actually gotten a couple questions about SharePoint lists. So again, not supported by the SharePoint connector at this time. I'll pass this information on to our product team. We'll look into it. But it does sound like with some finagling, you may be able to use your Excel connector to be populating SharePoint lists with that form response data. I can't give you Rachel's contact information to follow up, but I bet Google's your friend on how to set up a connection between Excel and SharePoint lists. I think we're running a little bit low on time. I'm going to try to grab a couple of these questions. We'll group a couple together. People asking clarification on the cost of connectors. The actual pricing is dependent on your contract, but I do want to make clear that these connectors are add-ons, so you will need to talk to sales to get those brought to your plan. You could reach out to your customer success manager if you have their email address, or feel free to use the link in the resources section that I've included here. You can get in contact with their sales team. If you have an account manager, they'll hook you up with them. They'll be able to talk to you about your needs, confirm your pricing, and get you all squared away. Let me grab at least one more.
I actually have one I'd like to answer, Josh, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Go ahead.
Perfect. So Kevin asked, they've been struggling to create APIs. They have a 10 record limit for each post. How could they use workflow to parse data into 10 record chunks and use Webhook to send us separate post calls? So that's actually where the actions in the Webhook connector come into play. You can have separate actions, and each of those actions will run individually and connect individually to each. So it would be just that one call. So you can have, if you have to send like 35 form fields over to your API connection, what you would then do would just be to have 4 actions. The first 3 would have 10 calls each, and then the last one would have 5. So then that way you can have that set up. It would be separate ones. So you might need to customize how that is set up, but that would be kind of how you can work with that 10 limit that you have.
Thank you. I meant to get to that question. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for jumping into that, Joelle. Let's grab, one more, and this on our storage connector, and then we'll have to sign off for the day. Kevin asks, any file size limitations for the storage connectors? Is that based on FormAssembly limits, or is it coming from the connector, Box, Google, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I was actually looking at that one. Yeah, so the FormAssembly does have a limit on the file size of 25 megabytes. So just know that. But yeah, the SharePoint, we can go higher, but FormAssembly itself has a limit already.
Great, fantastic. Let's go ahead and cut ourselves off there. We went a little bit longer than I usually meant to. I scheduled these things for 45 minutes. I appreciate both the audience and Joelle and Matt taking some time today. If I haven't gotten to your question, I will be getting back. I'll get back to you. Barb, I'll send you an email in just a little bit. You were asking some questions. I'll get back to you. I want to thank our audience for attending today. Again, before I let you go, 1, the recording will be available. I know we had some late joiners. Look for that to hit your inbox probably tomorrow. Usually we get it out within 24 hours. The resources section of this webinar is going to be your friend. If you're watching this as a recording, tomorrow, if you waited for that link, check out our blog on formassembly.com for our launch feature details. It's got help documentation. It's got recorded tutorials. It's got everything you might need to know to take advantage of the features that we've released as a part of this summer release. And last but not least, and I want to make this very clear, you want one of these new connectors, we want you to have them. Talk to our sales team. They'll give you a demo. We'll make sure that it works for you. Like if you're looking to connect to SharePoint lists, we'll make sure that you understand that SharePoint may not be the connector for you at this time, but we want to have those discussions. We want to know what you need out of these connectors. We want to help you make the best use of them. Our sales team is going to be able to help you do that. So go ahead and hit that link, schedule meetings with them. They'll be able to show you exactly how these connectors will work for your organization. And we can't wait to see what you do with them. With that, I'll give Matt and Joelle a chance to say goodbye, and then we'll send everybody on their way.
Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. I love coming in and just helping you guys learn more about FormAssembly.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And just to clarify, it's 35 megabytes. So I'll leave you on that note. So you get an extra 10 megabytes. So absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. We look forward to hearing feedback. and take care.
Wonderful. Thank you all again. We'll see you at the next webinar.